art and marine art and marine biodiversity in the Mediterranean Sea. And as part of this article, in January 2025, we plan to visit your underwater museum in Cannes, France, and also the submerged bronze statue of the Christ of the Abyss in Italy.
Liguria.
Yes, which I think is the oldest installation of its kind, dated back in 1954, I think, Fifi.
Yeah.
Correctly, yes. And so we are looking forward to this interview, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have prepared a small list of questions. Maybe I hand over to Olivier, who's going to ask the first.
Okay, maybe I just would like to introduce myself first. In fact, I'm teacher in high school of Valbonne, close to Cannes, very close. And most of our students know your underwater museum in Cannes. Oh, okay. And we are also working with, in collaboration with Cyprus High School. So we are trying to do links on a Mediterranean underwater museum. Thank you for that, Jason.
No problem. Nice to meet everybody. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this, and thank you very much everybody for speaking in English. You know, I realize there's lots of different nationalities, okay. And it's always feel slightly humbled when everyone has to speak in their second language. So thank you very much.
Okay, so maybe I can ask you the first question.
Perhaps Oliver, can I introduce my group? So hello everybody. So I am Geraldine Dargant, and a teacher in Centre International de Valbonne, and I am with a group of students involved in the sustainable development. So here's the group, and we prepare. Sorry. Donc, most of these students are involved in the project in school for the environment, and most of them are eco-delegates. So they ask some questions during the meeting, and thank you for the meeting.
Thank you, Geraldine. So my first question will be, the two museums helps reduce the pressure for boat entries and thus preserve the habitat. How was the choice of sites made?
So each one was very different in terms of the sort of environmental aspects, also the depth, the type of visitors that went to each place. The museum in Cannes was very much about boat anchorage because the substrate was, you know, a lot of Posidonia meadows. And there's a huge influx of private boats that come in every summer, and they cause a lot of damage. Each one anchors, and it's very, very detrimental. So that was a big objective on that particular site. The site in Ayia Napa, that was obviously a bit different. It was a deeper water site. It was part of a national marine park. And that was a little bit different. It wasn't so much about dealing with anchorage. It was more about sort of changing the dynamic of tourism and trying to get more people interested in marine ecologies, and also partying at night, but also, you know, taking a look at some of the, you know, amazing things you can see underwater in Cyprus. So they were slightly different. So each one had their own challenges. And in terms of sites, the one in Cannes was quite interesting because we actually tried to get the permit for one site that was a little bit deeper and was a little bit more interesting because it had sort of ravines, and it had a natural geography that would have been quite good for sculpture, because you'd sort of have to go down almost corridors underwater and then find the works. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the permit for that because for some reasons, which I can't quite recall at the moment, but we were unable. But there was another part that was shallower, and quite protected, that was had been used in the past for dumping old engines and machinery, and it had underwater cables that ran between the islands. And so part of it, if we could clean up that area, remove a lot of the debris and a lot of the old infrastructure, then we could then replace it with the sculptures. And we could also zone the area off for no anchoring, whereas the previous site was a lot harder to do that because it was in a more of a navigational area, and that would have impeded boat traffic. So this area is closer to the shore, very accessible, and yeah, worked out, in the long term. I think it worked out better.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Next question over to Geraldine.
I have one question, Frithjof,
Yeah,
which
Eleni?
is relevant. Yes, I have one question which is relevant to this. Which is the deepest museum? At what depth? Do you know, Jason?
Or just worldwide?
About the depth, the maximum depth.
Yes, you've built
your
quite a few. I mean, I'm
installations.
aware you've built also in Central America and the Maldives and other places. I mean, what is the deepest museum that you've built?
The deepest overall is in Australia in the Great Barrier Reef, and that was 16 meters deep.
Okay. Yes.
And the Cyprus one is much deeper than the one in Cannes is only 3 meters.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Obviously, in Cyprus, it's I think about 8 or 9
10,
meters.
10 meters.
Yeah,
9
9
meters. Yes.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Over to Geraldine.
So we were wondering, what were the biggest constraints about setting up both museums?
Yeah, lots. The part of making a public project, working in a place that is not doing something that's pioneering and new, and it hasn't got the legislation or case studies of previous projects to build on. It's always a huge challenge. So all of them have different issues. Certainly very bureaucratic. So getting the permits require lots of studies, lots of politics, lots of relationships, and those change throughout the year. And some of these projects can take many years to get established. And so you start working with a group of people, and the people change throughout the project, and so that can be complicated. So certainly, yeah, the administration side is quite complicated. The logistical side is also huge, and both these projects were done during the pandemic. So there was a whole level of new complication that I never saw coming, and it made it very, very difficult in shipping the works, in travel between the two sites. I mean, yeah, I think we were actually in Cyprus when the pandemic struck, and we were sorry for the second lockdown. And we were basically told, you've got like 24 hours to leave, otherwise you're going to get.
Oh goodness, this was early 2020. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You're going to get locked down in Cyprus, which is
we will not be able to leave anymore.
Wouldn't be able to leave, which is quite difficult.
And for the pandemic for the next 2 years of your lives. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, there was a lot of difficulties with that. Obviously, fundraising is the other big thing. You're using public funds, so you have to be able to justify how you're using them, be able to make sure that there's no political implications for the people who are sponsoring the projects, and just finding the funds for these type of projects is always
not
challenging.
Easy. No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, in terms of constraints, one episode comes to my mind: the infamous events in the Maldives. That was, I think, exactly 5 years ago, when initially I think the museum had been authorized to be built, and then somebody in the government made a change that this is against Islamic faith, which I was told actually by a Muslim student it is not.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's come up a lot of times. Politics, is a really critical part, and it's a part that you cannot control. Obviously, it's a lot of it is just luck, whether you get drawn into things. But I've been in a lot of people, when you make something so public facing or so sort of newsworthy, a lot of people see an opportunity to advance their political agendas. So that can work. That can work well, or that can also be negative. So, but in the case of the Maldives, the president was actually looking at the opinion polls, and he was doing very badly, and he needed something to. He wanted more to court the religious vote, so he wanted to be seen to be defending Islam and be sort of more kind of yeah, more sort of firm.
Yeah.
And so even though we had the permission and we'd been authorized and they'd seen the designs, he then made a sort of an effort to smash them up, and invited the army and invited the press to come along, and then made a sort of spectacle of dismantling it. And
that's bad. One could call it, I mean, it's a kind of religious fundamentalist populism, really. It was a populist thing to gain opinion polls, but okay, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it was quite bad, really, because he then lost the election a couple of weeks later, and was exiled from the Maldives. And but the damage was done. And the new administration came in, and it wasn't such a, it was fine.
Right. So, but there's no way of restoring the museum now. I mean, the damage is done, and there will be no statues put into the one in the Maldives. That is over.
No, we did restore it, but
really?
we did different sculptures. So we renewed them, more sort of abstract sculptures, more sort of maybe decorative.
Yeah.
But it lost a lot of its meaning, obviously.
Yes.
But I've also had it. I wouldn't just say it's there. I've had it in with the Spanish government, with political parties changing throughout the project, and each political party, one of the biggest flaws in in the democratic system is the the duration of each term of government. And so when you're looking at things that are, that need long-term planning, if there's a change in that administration, it's very, very difficult. And quite often they're very competitive, and they don't want each other's successes to be seen. And so yes, I've had problems in Mexico where people get funding and then use the funding for other aspects of their of their party. So yeah, it's definitely a part of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Next question that comes from me. Why did you choose an underwater setting to preserve or to create a symbol for preserving the Mediterranean Sea? I mean, it is a very original idea to go underwater with a museum like this.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, really vital. I think, us as human beings, I think we respond to emotions, feelings, identity, to, we sort of, you can be told all these statistics about the sea, and you can be told all these different things that are happening, but people need to feel what's happening. And I don't think you can actually feel unless you go into the ocean. And so for me, it's just one way of drawing people into that site, of creating this underwater museum, this kind of window, this portal into this other world that allows people who, maybe not considered the ocean as a place that's accessible. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people, are not confident in water. And so part of me is trying to sort of change that and put it in places where it's super clear, where it's really close to the shore, it's really accessible. Anybody
it's
can.
Super easy diving or snorkeling. It's exactly, super easy to access your museums.
And that's one of the big things, is to get people into the environment and to feel a connection with that space.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Next question is Olivier.
Yes. How is the invisibility of these museums, because they are underwater, accessible to everyone? Doesn't it only concern people who are already familiar with this environment and its protection?
I mean, a little bit from that previous point. I mean, I personally don't try to target divers or people who are experienced underwater, because they've already seen, you know, incredible reefs and drop-offs and walls and shipwrecks, and there's all sorts of incredible things to see. I'm not saying the sculptures aren't interesting, but you know, it's more that I kind of want people who hadn't considered it, the general public, and by making it super accessible, and by also making the sculptures, you know, often they're about communities, about people, and I kind of want that region to feel connected with their own. I want them to feel a kind of sense of ownership for their coastline.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Next one goes to Geraldine.
Yeah, it's Anis who's going to ask the question, please.
Hello.
Hello.
It's good.
Yeah, okay.
Hello, sir. Today I want to know, however, museum in the Mediterranean planned.
So I missed the first bit.
Are other museums in the Mediterranean planned?
Thank you.
Yes, I'm talking with a few people at the moment. You know, for me, the Mediterranean is such a beautiful space. And for an unusual thing, which people don't always think, is actually the color of the water is very different, and the atmosphere that you have in the Mediterranean is very different from other sites. And you wouldn't necessarily. It's obviously generally quite clear, but it also has a sort of different feel to it. And I don't know what it is about the quality of it. It's almost like a sort of dream-like state. You know, you can see why, you know, Jacques Cousteau, and it has this incredible heritage of people in the sea. And I don't know, but yeah, it's a beautiful place to work. I've been looking at places in Italy, in Croatia, in Turkey, in where was the other place I've been looking? In Greece as well. So
okay.
yeah, there's a few different places. Nothing is like really confirmed, but I have quite a few different ideas for new types of work. So looking to realize.
Excellent. Okay. Next one goes to Olivier.
You are an artist committed to the protection of the environment, and in particular to the oceans. Is the Mediterranean Sea a support for your works or a subject to your works?
I think a little bit of both, really. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, that in terms of the subject, you know, I do think it has this beautiful feeling. It elicits in the viewer the way, just little things like the Posidonia in Cannes, the way it moves from side to side, the way it kind of the floor is sort of shifting. It has this kind of turquoise blue that shines down. Definitely, no, it's really kind of heavily influences how you read the works, you know, how you design the works. But I also think that there is also an immense sadness about the Mediterranean, and that's because it's so heavily overfished. And when I look at it in comparison to other sites I've worked, you know, and I go back and I expect there to be really colonized, especially the forest in Ayia Napa. You know, that the trees were really designed to aggregate fish, you know, and it's been very slow to happen. And I think that's because it's so overfished in both sites, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously in Cannes, you know, I did work with some local fishermen who were the models for some of the pieces. And, you know, when I took them to see the works, they was really sort of proud to be part of it. But then they were also quite sad that they'd seen their stock fish catches, you know, completely collapse in the last kind of 20 years.
Very true.
Okay, thank you. Next one goes to Geraldine.
Yeah, the two Mediterranean museums, Musan and Cannes Eco Museum, are both located near ultra-touristic seaside resorts, Cannes in France and Ayia Napa in Cyprus. What intentions do you wish to give in these two museums in relation to that specific public?
Well, I sort of think I mentioned a little bit earlier that, you know, it's about trying to sort of reconceptualize those spaces. So, and maybe not put so much pressure on the beaches, on those sort of highly dense urban areas. It's about trying to introduce people to more natural sites, to have a, you know, hopefully foster a better sense of empathy with some of these natural areas. And it's, you know, and how they're both connected. You know, I think, you know, both areas, the, you know, the land and sea are heavily interdependent, and people sort of realize that, you know, when they get to visit.
Okay.
Very good. Next one goes to Olivier.
Based on the order of the municipalities of Ayanapa and Cannes, what was your degree of freedom and in the choices of statues, the choice of the site, and the choice of the promotion to the public or schools, respectively?
Yes. So yeah, both authorities were very good, and what I generally do is I visit both places. You know, I have a research trip where I meet lots of people, look into the history and look into the different stories, meet, you know, all the community. And then from that, I'll then present a sort of series of ideas. And from those series of ideas, we then start to choose which ones would be most suitable, which ones would, you know, fit the different criteria. It's not a completely open book. So obviously, in Cannes, we wanted to reference the mask, the man with the iron mask. We wanted it to, you know, be related to the islands.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Since the castle with the man of the iron mask mask cell is right next to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So we wanted it to be, you know, be connected to that, to the history and to that island.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and same within with the Cypriot works, that we wanted them to, you know, reference the local fauna, flora that was on the island. So a lot of the trees are some of the trees that used to exist on the island. The sort of the way the sculptures were positioned and posed, we wanted them to sort of have a kind of archaeological feel to them. So yeah, and in both sides we went through a range of different designs, and the authorities help select which one.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Geraldine?
Yeah, next question, Anis, please. Please.
Could the two museums reflect belonging to Mediterranean population through its sustainable development issue and through the themes of these sculptures?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think it's nice to be able to sort of do a tourism project that actually increases wildlife, that increases biodiversity, that leaves a footprint that's not taking something away. And for me, it's really been some of the sites I've done around the world where I've gone back 10 years later or 15 years later, and you sort of see that it was a barren stretch of seabed, and now you go there and there's a huge sort of web of life that's grown from this one site.
So you can actually see that biodiversity has been enhanced if you compare the situation before with after the construction of.
Oh, hugely! Yes, yeah. And on some of the sites, there's teams of marine biologists that do complete studies on them and actually track the different species. And I mean, one of the oldest, well, the Mexican one, is almost coming up to, I think, 12, 13 years now. And when I go back to that site, there's thousands of hard corals, soft corals, massive abundance of fish, down to the sort of macrobiotic life where you can take a small quadrant, study the amount of species in it, and there'll be, hundreds of different things in each. And that was all completely barren beforehand. So Yes, it's nice.
Very interesting. Yeah. Actually, I'm about to ask: is there a way you could give us a list of all the museums you have established around the world? That would be useful. That's something we might actually include in our article or articles, if there's more than one, that we provide an overview. I think people would like to know this. If you look at the world map, where is one of Jason Castell's museums that you could visit on a dive trip? If you go, for example, to Mexico. My next question would be, are the two sites in Cannes and in Ayia Napa, are they subject to scientific study by marine biologists, oceanographers, to look at actually what they do in terms of marine biodiversity and ecosystem functioning? And if it's not the case, is this something you would encourage? And what kind of research in particular would you like to see? And is this maybe something where we could collaborate, since we are a group of marine biologists? Who work a lot in the Mediterranean?
Yes, I do believe there are some studies. I don't know how frequent they are, but I know in Cannes there is a marine biologist that I think oversees the whole area and also includes the museum as part of it. I haven't seen a report for some time, but I know she's done quite a lot of analysis on the site. And obviously the Ayia Napa one is in the National Marine Park. So there is a team of marine biologists that do work within that. I don't exactly know the methodology that they're doing for their research on how, whether they're just marking out quadrants and doing calculating the number of species. I'm not quite sure what is the studies. And other sites we've done more complex studies. So we've had universities do prolonged monthly surveys on each site and record all the different data. And we've also included monitoring devices.
After the interview, maybe you could either send us any such studies if they're available in electronic format, or give us the contacts of marine scientists that you know of that do such work. Sure. We do not want to reinvent the wheel since our own research.
No.
But we would consider it very valuable to conduct such work. For sure,
yes,
and we might be. We often visit both the Côte d'Azur and also Cyprus, so it's something we could definitely take on.
Okay. Yes. No, that'd be excellent. I've actually, there's a website. One of the websites I have is Underwater Museum, so that has a list of all the different museums everywhere. And then on my other site, the underwatersculpture.com site, there's a part which is art and science, and there is some sort of case studies from each place.
Okay, that's something
I know. In Ayia Napa, they actually cited a nudibranch that has never been seen before in Cyprus. Wow. And that was recorded.
Wow, interesting. And
listed, which was quite good.
That is very important. Yeah.
And I also, on some of the newer works, I've been incorporating sensors. So I've just done a piece that has temperature loggers and what is it? One's temperature, one's salinity. There's another one which also has the word has gone. There's one in Australia that has a weather station, and it takes the water temperature and then relays it to the shoreline of what's happening on the Great Barrier Reef. So the sculpture changes color according to the water temperature. And there's another one which has what's the name for this? The recording device.
A logger, some kind of logger.
Hydrophone. That was the one.
It has a microphone, basically. Yeah.
Built into it, and it records all the sound data over a 6-month period.
Wow.
And that's been quite interesting, I think. And I think that could be would be really interesting to just, in the future, to add more kind of monitoring equipment in, so that they can see some of these long-term trends. And then that data can also be disseminated through the sculptures, through their publicity, through their visitor centers, through their publicity, basically. So I think it's a good way to sort of combine art and science.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yes, and also with the hydrophones, so you can monitor the presence of marine mammals in the area.
Yes, I did lots of things. Yes, and also the negative impacts of noise pollution from boats and what impact that has.
I think in Cyprus it would be particularly interesting to have hydrophones because they have, apparently there are monk seals in the area of Ayia Napa, which is the rarest seal species in the world. And they seem to have a resident population in the Ayia Napa area. So it would be of interest to see.
Yeah, they do. Cape Greco, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. We've worked down our list of questions. Now I have a provision here in the program for students to ask questions impromptu that were not on the schedule. If there are any questions from the student side. Geraldine, how are things?
We ask a question, but now it's okay for us, I think. Any question about students? Other question? Do you have any question? No, it's okay for us. Thank you very much for the meeting and for your time as well. Thank you.
Maybe last opportunity for my team, for Olivier and Eleni. Anything you want to say on this occasion?
No, that's fine. Just want to say thank you so much, Jason, for your time. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. I should maybe say two things. Eleni is working on this article as part of her PhD here at the University of Aberdeen, and so we may actually be in touch for any follow-up, especially about the more scientific aspects about marine biodiversity. And the other thing is we will actually all be on the Côte d'Azur in your area at the end of January. It might be nice if you're around to meet up for a cup of coffee or something. If you happen to be in the area, the second last week of January.
I'm based in Southeast England.
Okay. You're not in southern France all the time.
No. So yeah, no, I'm in the UK at the moment. If you're ever in the UK and you want to visit the studio, you're more than welcome.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I'm also in the UK, but at the other end of the country, in the far north, in Aberdeenshire.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Right, but I think we would like to share our draft manuscripts before anything is submitted for publication. I think we would really appreciate your input. Already for a fact check to make sure that things are really factual.
Sure, no, that's good. And likewise, if you need any photographs or anything to support, then there's loads of material that I can supply.
Excellent. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else from our side?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Otherwise, a big thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hear from us before long. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, students.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thank
Jason.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
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 Je vais dire au revoir.